Hello fellow readers and readeresses. This is the second part of my video on the death of Mrs. Westaway and is more of a spoilery discussion. The first part, which was a spoiler-free review, goes over the different components of the book and whether I thought they were well executed or not. And if you haven't already, you can watch it here. In this one, we go through the things that bothered me about this book in detail: the plot and character inconsistencies, the unnecessary filler, the conveniences, and the questions I still have left. Without further ado, let's begin. I'm a bit conflicted on how Harriet's character has been put together. And I'm not discussing whether I think she's a good person. We see the struggles that she goes through and the choices that she has to make as a consequence, and I think it's easy to empathize with her to an extent. But herein lies the issue. Both Harriet and the supporting characters seem to be rather simplistic and surface level, especially considering the genre this book is trying to occupy. Harriet's character specifically bothered me because she was supposed to be this cold reader schemer, yet kept on making the stupidest mistakes, which weren't uncovered only because of random convenient accidents. Like for example, Mr. Treswick being too distracted to hear her. Come on. Worst of all, she couldn't string a proper sentence together to save her life, and I'm gonna give you some examples right now. This represents basically 90% of her conversations with the family, and while it was somewhat understandable in the beginning, it quickly became rather annoying. The dissonance between her thoughts and intentions and the way she executed them was really unnecessary. I would rather have read a story about a woman who's confident in her scheming and then, based on the circumstances and the people that she meets, changes her mind, rather than a story about this indecisive girl stumbling her way through reality. It seemed to me as though the author wanted us to like Harriet so much that she didn't dare give her any negative traits, which made her so bland that there was nothing really to like about her. So Mr. Treswick decided she still gets the estate even though she's not really Mord's daughter. Just like that. We don't even see proof that EZRA is actually her father. There's nobody alive to confirm that, and we go by the word of the girl who stands to inherit and has admittedly lied before about that, as though messy will arrangements always work out just like that. I mean, you couldn't claim $20 if your name was slightly misspelled on a check and you had 5 relatives and Jesus in tow to vouch it's actually you. Yet this random chick gets this huge estate because she said she was the daughter of some dead guy. I just don't buy it. It irks me that we didn't even get to see how the Lawn Shark storyline ended, and it took such a big chunk of the beginning of the book. So much set up for nothing. It felt like the author didn't need it any longer since the story was set into motion and kinda dropped it halfway through. And considering that Harriet won't be in possession of her inheritance for a while now, I'm wondering how she managed to resolve this when she only had 6 days to pay back to this douche. I just hate that the storyline didn't get a proper conclusion. And the entire ending overall felt so rushed. We spent all this time talking about magpies when they had nothing to do with the story overall, and for an ending we get 3 pages of Agatha Christie style reveal spelled out for us by the main character. We see nothing after that. What happens to the house, finding the bodies, funerals, dealing with potential other challenges? Nothing. Just it's all gonna be fine because she pulled a tarot card. It just felt so anticlimactic and wishy-washy. Why did Mrs. Westaway leave the house to Hal? I get the wanting to wreak havoc on everybody after her death spiel, but she could have done that in a number of ways without having to go through this convoluted, may or may not work plot. Am I the only one who finds this utterly weak and unimpressive? That's neither good enough nor clear enough reason for the way that the will of Mrs. Westaway was set. And even if we grant it possible that she would do that on a random whim, I don't think it's a good enough plot point to build an entire mystery book around. It just seemed lazy and disjointed. Let's talk about the twist with the photo. I sniffed that one out almost immediately when Harriet opted not to mention who she's asking about specifically, but just to say, who's the other woman. Now, I thought that was a nice touch, but there are two things that bother me right here. Number one, who's looking at a photo of more than two people and asks about them without pointing at them? Do people really do that? It just seemed like an unnatural thing. But that's the smaller issue. What bothers me more is that you can look at a photo that features twins and she knows that it's supposed to feature twins. And she never figured out who those twins are. I mean, look, I know that in certain situations this can happen. Twins don't necessarily always look like each other, but these specific two did resemble each other quite a lot. Dark hair, dark eyes. And how on earth would you think that Maggie, with her blonde hair and blue eyes, is actually the twin of EZRA, when his actual twin is right there and resembles him way more? And when that twin's face is painfully familiar to you, I just don't buy it. What was the storyline with Mrs. Warren having so many pictures of EZRA? It just seemed weird that she would like him so much without any specific reason. It's like the author wanted to make her more spicy, so she threw this random fact about her there, as though that counts as a character development. Speaking of Mrs. Mrs. Warren, if you read Rebecca, you know what I'm talking about. Why the hell did everybody put up with her terrible behavior? It seems weird that none of these temperamental grown-ups ever said anything to put her in her place. I mean, she's a servant in the house. I know that she's been there almost forever, but you still can't convince me that they would just put up with it. Why did EZRA kill Maggie? The way I see it, he either didn't want to pay child support or was ashamed of the inappropriateness of their familial relationship in a way. I'm trying to stay away from the bad words here. If we go with the first option, him not wanting to take care of the kid, I'm not convinced. You mean to tell me that he'd rather kill a person than pay child support when he's not short for cash in any way? To choose the option of murdering someone kinda seems stupid. And if we pick the second option, why would it be such a big deal that Maggie is his kid? I mean, I get it, they're cousins, but Maggie is a distant cousin. And you mean to tell me that this sort of a thing wasn't very popular with rich British families, especially back in the day? Come on. And speaking of his alleged fatherhood, it irked me that he had absolutely no initial reaction to meeting Harriet for the first time. I get that he's probably a psychopath or some such, but I still think the author should have done a better job setting him up to be the father. The fact that she gave absolutely no clues made his reveal to be the one appear kinda lazy. Same goes for the lack of setup for him to be the killer. I mean, he just up and turned into a violent psycho. And I hate it when authors do that. I mean, it's okay to make anyone be the killer, really, but just set it up properly. What was with the magpies? They were referenced so many times, and beyond decorating EZRA's car with feces, they didn't play much of a role at all. We started the book with the counting rhyme about them, and then they were referenced ever so often, and ended up being completely irrelevant. I get that the author was trying to go for the atmosphere, but she could have done so by mentioning them and then moving on, or mentioning them in the beginning and in the end in some way. Instead, she chose to place them in the center of attention and then do nothing with them. And it's easy to pinpoint them as completely irrelevant because if you eradicated them from the book, absolutely nothing would have changed. What was the deal with Abel's husband? I never really understood whether Abel actually lied about him coming to the house in the earlier years. And then if he did, what was the point of it? Why did he lie? Also, the pills he gave Harriet that first night, we focused on them a bit and then it ended up being nothing. The whole inclusion of his storyline in this book was kind of unclear to me. He didn't play any role in the main story from what I can tell, and the side plot with him and Abel went pretty much nowhere. For example, what was the point of him cheating on Abel? And what was the point of him meeting Harriet close to the lake? I mean, I get that he was supposed to be the red herring for Hal's father, but we still didn't get any closure on his storyline. It didn't get revealed that first he isn't and then who the real one is. We just found out who the real one is and Edward just faded into the void. Edwin? Honestly, I felt like he was added there to reach a certain desired word count rather than for narrative benefit. If Mrs. Warren was so eager to keep Hal alive, why would she stuff her in that tiny, terrible room that is so isolated from everyone else and can be locked only on the outside? It seemed like she wanted to serve her on a platter to the murderer. So all of the talk at the end that she was so noble trying to save Harriet's life just sounded illogical and unearned to me. And why did Harriet continue to sleep in this tiny, creepy room after it was announced that she's now the owner of the house? Even if Mrs. Warren refused to make her a nicer, better room, she could have done so herself, especially after she found out someone was trying to potentially kill her. Let's go back to Mrs. Warren. Her death was so nonchalantly brushed off. Nobody much reacted to it, and everyone went on their merry way after that without giving a second glance. What happened to the body? How did he actually kill her? Was there a funeral? It would have been nice to see it actually take place. See the characters make peace with her. Instead, we got nothing. So, Ezra was okay with Hal inheriting the house? Why? The author tried to convince us that the older brothers would sell the house and the body would be discovered. But what's the guarantee that if Harriet took the house, the body wouldn't be discovered still? What if she went to fix things up and found the body? What if she decided to sell the house herself? The body would have still been discovered. And if he was so worried about it, why didn't he do something about it, like move it or something? It's just lazy plotting, counting on us paying attention to other things like magpies or tarot cards. In conclusion, I am quite disappointed, yet I still enjoyed my reading experience. It was only upon a further, deeper consideration that I noticed all the holes and conveniences in the story, which just goes to show that you'll be way happier if you don't look too closely into things. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it didn't ruin your reading experience too much. I would be happy to read your opinions on the matter, especially if you can answer some of my questions. It's quite possible that I missed something. Once again, if you haven't watched my spoiler-free video and are curious about it, you can go ahead and do that. It's linked up here. Thank you for watching. You truly made my day. Have a great day, and I wish you all 2 magpies. Once upon a time, there was a person who wasn't subscribed to my channel. And then they did. And they lived happily ever after. This could be you.